How many times have you promised yourself that tomorrow would finally be different? You set the alarm for 5 a.m. with the best intentions, but when that cold morning air hits, the snooze button feels like your only friend. But what you don't realize is that it's not just the cold air holding you back, it's a specific emotional weight you've been carrying without even knowing it. Don't beat yourself up, you aren't lazy. You're just caught in a trap designed to keep you drifting through life. You've tried the planners and the productivity hacks before, yet you still feel like a passenger in a car, driven by your own bad habits. There is a hidden reason why your discipline always fails, a silent anchor that most gurus never mention, and I will reveal what it is in a few minutes. What if the key to your destiny isn't found in more hustle, but in the sacred silence you're currently sleeping through? Reclaiming your mornings isn't just about waking up, it's about unlocking a secret weapon that hands you an extra 45 days of life every single. This is the hidden path to wealth and inner peace that the elite use to build empires while the world is still dreaming. Today, you'll witness the transformation of Thomas, a hopeless youth who was bankrupt in character and drowning in half-finished projects. He was paralyzed, not because he lacked talent, but because he was carrying stones that didn't belong to him. Everything changed when he discovered the Solitude protocol, a system so powerful it turned his deepest failures into his greatest strengths. By the end of this video, I will show you the exact blueprint Thomas used, but more importantly, I will reveal the one thing you must drop before you can ever hope to wake up at 5 a.m. If you're ready to stop being a background character in your own story, you need to see exactly how Thomas hit rock bottom, because the truth about his failure is the same truth currently sabotaging your life. Thomas lay there while the blue light of his phone carved deep shadow into the peeling wallpaper of his bedroom. That persistent, jarring alarm buzzed for the 5th time, but his thumb moved with the practiced grace of a man already defeated. It wasn't just a snooze button he was hitting, it was a rhythmic surrender to a life that felt like it was slipping through his fingers. The clock hit 10:30 a.m., and the weight of another wasted morning settled in his chest like a heavy, cold stone. You've probably felt that same hollow ache, haven't you? That silent realization that the world's already halfway through its day while you are still stagnant. But here is what Thomas didn't know yet. The reason that stone in his chest felt so heavy wasn't just because he woke up late. He was unknowingly carrying the weight of expectations and failure that weren't even his to bear. A concept we will explore when he meets the man who changed everything. While others are out there building empires, you're still tangled in sheets that feel more like chain. Thomas closed his eyes, trying to outrun the guilt. But the sun, peeking through the blind, only highlighted the mess around him. This wasn't just laziness. It was a slow, agonizing funeral for the person he always thought he'd eventually grow up to be. There is a specific mechanism in your brain that locks these chains in place when you carry unseen weights. And if you don't learn how to drop them, no alarm clock in the world will ever be loud enough to wake you up. The world is a noisy place, always shouting for your attention with the desperation of a street vendor after dark. But the winners, the ones who actually move the needle, know that the real work happens when the lights are low. They don't wait for the sun to give them permission to start. They've already been at it for hours by then. Thomas began to suspect that his afternoon hustle was just a frantic attempt to fix a day that was born broken. Think of your life as a skyscraper. You can't just slap a roof on it and hope the wind doesn't blow it over. But here is the secret most people miss. You cannot build a skyscraper if your foundation is buried under the rubble of other people's expectations. Destiny isn't some lottery ticket you find on the sidewalk. It's a blueprint you draw in the sacred cold hour. At 5 a.m., the atmosphere is thin and the distractions are dead, leaving only you and the person. It's the only time of day where you can be the architect of your own soul without the world's constant interference. However, Thomas was about to find out that being an architect requires a clean slate. You can't draw a new destiny while your hands are still full of the stones of your past. In a moment, you'll see the exact realization that forced him to finally put those stones down so he could finally pick up his tool. When you choose the solitude of 5 a.m., you aren't just waking up early, you're finally deciding that you matter more. Thomas sat on the edge of a mattress that had seen better days, surrounded by a fortress of empty aluminum cans. The air smelled of stale coffee and the metallic tang of energy consumed during late-night gaming sessions. His desk was a graveyard of Day One journal with only 2 pages filled, a monument to a version of himself that never quite arrived. It's a specific kind of mess that screams, I have potential, but also admits, I have no idea how to use. We've all been there, feeling like a high-performance engine that's stuck in neutral while the rest of the world zooms past. At 22, Thomas was rich in years, but utterly bankrupt in character, spending his best hours scrolling through other people's digital highlights. But here is the chilling truth. The reason he couldn't move forward wasn't just the distractions on his screen. It was the invisible stones he was trying to carry into a future that didn't have room for. The math of his drift was brutal. 4 hours a day wasted is roughly 60 full days a year set on fire. Imagine what you could do with 2 extra months of focused time to master Python, digital design, or professional copyright. That is the secret weapon of the elite. They don't have more hours, they just don't set theirs on fire. Thomas wanted the fruits of success, but was terrified of the labor, clinging to the comfort of his dark sanctuary. However, there is a reason some people find labor easy while you find it impossible. And it has everything to do with a weight you don't even realize you're holding, something Thomas would only learn after a devastating wake-up call. Thomas stood in the hallway, the floorboards creaking under his weight as he reached for a glass of water. Through the thin kitchen door, the muffled voices of his parents drifted out like a cold, biting winter wind. They wasn't shouting, they were speaking with that quiet, heavy disappointment that hurts far worse than any loud argument. He's drifting, his father whispered. Those words hit Thomas's chest with the force of a physical blow. He realized he had become the family project, the one people worried about in hushed tones over dinner. Just then, a notification popped up. A high school friend had just closed a major deal. The crisis of comparison isn't just jealousy. It's the sudden, terrifying sight of the gap between who you are and who you were meant to be. He retreated to the bathroom, staring at a face that looked tired from doing absolutely nothing of any real value. But as he looked in the mirror, he saw something else, an invisible fatigue. He wasn't just tired from lack of sleep, he was exhausted from the silent stones of trying to live up to everyone's expectations while failing his own. Success isn't a bolt of lightning. It's a series of boring, disciplined choices made in private. You can't build a mansion on a foundation of sand. Thomas realized that being a background character in your own story is the most painful way to live. He needed a way out, a mentor to show him how to clear the rubble. He was about to encounter a man who would show him that his problem wasn't a lack of time, but a lack of space in his soul. A secret that allows the elite to move through life with a lightness that looks like magic. In the gray light of dawn, Thomas saw a figure sitting perfectly still, as if the rising sun was his only commander. The park was draped in a silver mist, but in the center sat Master Wei, a man whose spine was as straight as an ancient, unshakable oak. While the rest of the city was lost in digital dreams, this man looked like he was holding the world steady. Thomas approached with the hesitant steps of a man out of place. Wei opened his eyes with a slow, deliberate clarity that seemed to read Thomas's very soul. "You're here because your bed has become a cage and your phone has become your master," the old man said. But then, Wei's gaze softened, as if he saw the invisible burden on Thomas's shoulder. "The world is loud because it is desperate for attention," he continued. "But you are exhausted because you are carrying weight that was never meant for. If you want what the average man has, then keep doing what the average man does." Wei's voice was like smooth stone. "But if you want to lead, you must learn to love the crushing solitude of the early morning. This is where the mask falls off, and you finally meet the person you've been avoiding." Thomas looked at his trembling hands, feeling the bite of the 5 a.m. wind. He was about to ask how a few hours of sleep could change his broken life, but Wei stopped him. Before I show you the math of the morning, Wei whispered, you must understand why your spirit is too heavy to rise. There is a hidden secret about the way you spend your energy that makes every snooze button feel like a tragedy. Master Wei pulled out a small, weathered notebook and began to jot down numbers with a steady, practiced hand. Most folks think time is a fixed currency, he said, but they're spending it like it's water from a leaky tap. He looked Thomas in the eye as the morning sun began to bleed through the gray horizon. You're not just losing sleep, you're losing the only unfair advantage that actually works in this competitive world. If you reclaim the 3 hours between 5 a.m. and 8 a.m., you gain 21 hours every single. Think about that. That's nearly a full day of life that your peers are literally sleeping right through. Over a year, that adds up to 1,100 hours of pure, unadulterated focus. Thomas, while your generation hits snoo, I'm handing you an extra 45 days of life every single year. Imagine what you could do with 45 extra days to master high-value skills like coding or strategic copywriting, while your friends are still dreaming of wealth. This is the 8th day of the week that no one else knows exists. But then, Wei dropped a truth that made Thomas's stomach turn. The math is perfect, Thomas, but your execution is flawed. You can have all the extra time in the world, but if you spend those 45 days carrying the stones of yesterday's regrets and other people's demand, you will still end the year empty-handed. Thomas felt the sheer scale of his past laziness sink into his gut. It wasn't just a lifestyle choice, it was a mathematical certain that he had been living a half-life. He had the numbers, but he still didn't have the lightness required to actually get out of bed. He was about to learn the practical system, but he would soon realize that the system only works if you first perform a specific emotional audit, a secret we will uncover in the very next step. Wei handed Thomas a simple black notebook, its pages empty and waiting for a brand new story. This was the Solitude protocol, a secret weapon few in your generation will ever have the guts to try. It starts with the Mindset Hour, a time for total silence where you journal your fears until they transform from monsters in the dark into fuel for your fire. But pay close attention. This isn't just venting on paper. It's an emotional unloading process that most people get wrong, causing them to carry yesterday's stress into today's mission. Next come the skill-building hours, where you forge your weapons in the quiet. While the internet is still asleep, you dive into high-value crafts like coding, design, or persuasive writing. To protect this, you must swear an oath to the 3 iron rule, the digital fast. No social media or emails until the sun has fully conquered the sky. The physical spark, a ritual of movement to wake the blood and bone. The deep work, promise. 60 minutes of undivided focus on your one biggest, scariest goal. It sounds simple on paper, but in the silence of 5 a.m., it feels like an impossible weight to lift. Thomas looked at the rule, feeling a surge of hope. Yet his body was already dreading the cold. What Thomas didn't realize was that he was about to hit a war of the eyelids that cannot be won with willpower alone. There is a hidden reason why the body fights this protocol so hard, and it's not just about being tired. It's about a specific refusal to let go that we will see in the most agonizing week of his life. The first 7 days felt like a physical mutiny. Thomas's body screaming for the velvet comfort of the blankets. The 5 a.m. air was a sharp, biting blade against his skin, mocking his sudden, desperate desire for change. Every nerve ending pleaded him to surrender back to the warmth and the safety of his old drifting habits. This is the war of the eyelids, a battle where your own mind becomes your most treacherous and vocal enemy. You know that voice, don't you? The one that whispers, "Just 5 more minutes." With the deceptive sweetness of honey. Thomas sat on the edge of his mattress, shivering as the heavy silence of the room weighed 1,000 pounds. But here is the secret most people never realize during the struggle. It's not the cold air that keeps you in bed. It's the fact that your bed is the only place where you don't have to face the stones of your unfulfilled potential. Most men fail here because they treat feelings as facts rather than temporary clouds passing through a morning sky. By day 10, however, the screaming in his head finally began to fade into a quiet, rhythmic hum of deep, focused work. For the first time, he could hear his own thoughts without the exhausting static of social media noise. The hopeless youth was losing its grip, but only because he had finally learned to stop clinging to the weights that made the morning feel like a burden. But how exactly did he silence that honey-sweet voice of surrender? The answer lies in a specific shift of focus that we are about to witness in his ultimate transformation. 3 months in, the man in the mirror was a stranger to the drifter who once hit snooze until noon. Thomas moved with a new, quiet authority, his shoulders pulled back as if he were carrying an invisible crown. The clutter in his room and in his mind had vanished, replaced by the organized tools of a craftsman who respects his own time. You see, when you master the morning, you inadvertently master the rest of your day without even trying. Because of those extra 45 days of focused work, his portfolio was now filled with skills that made recruiters lean in with interest. While others sent out generic resumes, he showcased a mastery of data analysis and technical writing honed in the dark. A top-tier firm noticed his Solitude protocol projects, offering a position that doubled his previous salary expectations. Success doesn't chase those who are loud. It seeks out the quiet builders who are ready when the door finally opens. But here is the most profound part of Thomas's harvest. He realized that his old friends, who were still struggling with Sunday scaries and late-night jitters, weren't just unlucky. They were still anchored to the ground by the same stone he had finally learned to drop. Thomas wasn't just working harder, he was working without the friction of other people's expectations. He had escaped the trap, but he knew he couldn't leave everyone else behind. He was about to reveal a final covenant that bridges the gap between a broken youth and a leader of men, a secret that turns individual discipline into a movement. Thomas stood on the same dew-slicked grass where he had once begged an old man for a secret map. The mist still rolled through the trees, but he didn't shiver. He belonged to the stillness of the dawn now. Nearby, he saw another young man with the same glazed, hopeless eyes he once had, a ghost of his former self. It was time to pay the debt of wisdom forward. The difference between a drifter and a leader isn't talent or luck, Thomas said, echoing Master Way. It's simply 1 hour of cold discipline. Most people spend their lives reacting to a world that doesn't care about their dream. But you can choose to be the one who sets the tempo, the one who claims the morning as your own kingdom. We are forming a covenant of the dawn, a brotherhood of those who refuse to let the alarm clock win. If you've watched this far, it's because you're tired of the snooze button controlling your destiny and your bank account. If you are ready to claim your extra 45 days this year, leave a comment with the words Day 1 below. This isn't just a comment, it's a digital signature on a contract for a life that most men will never know. But let's be honest, declaring Day 1 is the easy part. The reason 99% of people who comment will fail by next Tuesday is because they are trying to run a marathon while carrying a backpack full of lead, the very stones Thomas had to drop before his feet could finally. Tomorrow at 5 a.m. you will face a choice in that cold room, and without the final piece of the Solitude protocol, the weight will likely win again. You've seen how Thomas turned his drifting life into a masterpiece, and now the heavy ball is firmly in your court. Most people will finish this video, feel a spark of inspiration, and then sink right back into their warm, familiar blankets tomorrow morning. But you're not most people, are you? I'm challenging you to commit to the Solitude protocol, to witness your own resurrection. However, I need to be brutally honest before you set that alarm. Many of the stories you hear here aren't just stories. They reflect the invisible weight you may be carrying every day. If you've ever wondered why you can't seem to maintain the discipline of the 5 a.m. start, it's because you are trying to climb a mountain while carrying a backpack full of lead. You aren't just fighting sleep, you're fighting the exhaustion of holding on to things that don't belong to you. If you're tired of holding pain, responsibility, and guilt that were never yours, I created a specialized guide called The Weight of Stones That Are Not Yours. It's for those who want to let go, set boundaries, and finally live with the lightness required to actually own their destiny. Success isn't a gift for the lucky. It's a cold, hard calculation for those brave enough to own the dark. But you cannot own the dark if your spirit is heavy with the stones of others. When you get the ebook today, I'm also including 2 vital bonuses to accelerate your freedom. Bonus 1, Learning to Let Go, a deep dive into releasing the specific burdens that keep you hitting the snooze button. Bonus 2, When Saying No is an act of self-love, because you cannot reclaim your 5 a.m. hours if you are constantly giving your energy away to people who didn't earn it. This is your moment of truth, the split second where you decide if you're a drifter or a leader. Don't wait for a Monday or a New Year's resolution that you'll just break anyway. Start tomorrow in the biting silence of 5 a.m., but start light. The link to The Weight of Stones That Are Not Yours and all your bonuses is in the description and in the pinned comment below. The world belongs to those who show up before the sun, while the noise is still asleep and the possibilities are endless. I'll see you in the morning, but for now, the only question left is, will you stay in bed or will you finally wake up?